I'm ready.
The Wheel of Time Season 2, Episode 3 is called What Might Be. In this episode, Nynaeve gets the Christmas Carol treatment in her accepted test, Rand confronts madness and navigates a new culture and girlfriend in Kyrian, and Perrin and friends face an invading group of almost alien imperialists who force everyone to either swear oaths of obedience or die. Oh, and I guess Matt was in it too. Let's unravel the episode to see what we can find. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. You might be wondering where I've been. I'll get to that if you stick around until the end. While this video is mostly safe for non-book readers, please check the description for a detailed spoiler warning. There's an old saying that I tend to agree with. Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. After watching and rewatching this episode and listening to all kinds of podcasts and opinions for literally months, I personally think that a better title for this episode would have been either The Price of Power or The Price of the Ring. In her accepted test, Nynaeve learns about the sacrifices required to wear the Great Serpent Ring and to become a powerful Aes Sedai. Rand fights two kinds of corrupt power. He learns there's nothing he can do to stop the inevitable madness and corruption that comes from channeling the male half of the One Power, and he learns that the aristocracy are corrupted by political power and use it to stay rich by exploiting and harming the poor. Perrin, and even more so Uno, learn what happens when imperialists with too much power try to take over the world. There's just so much to unpack, so I've decided to divide this episode Unraveling into two parts. This video will focus mainly on Nynaeve, Egwene, Elaine, and the White Tower storyline. And I'll create a second part very soon that will focus on Rand, Matt, and Perrin. Be sure to like this video and to subscribe to Unraveling the Pattern so you don't miss it. So let's jump right into Nynaeve's accepted test. As a quick reminder, the different ranks in the White Tower are first Novice, then Accepted, and then Aes Sedai. Different tests are required to advance from Novice to Accepted and from Accepted to Aes Sedai. This process usually takes decades of training, but as we and Egwene know too well,
Nynaeve is the most powerful channeler this tower has seen in
1,000 years. Yes. Everyone keeps saying.
So she keeps getting special privileges and is put through her accepted test on an accelerated program with very little preparation or training. Nynaeve is like a Stretch Armstrong doll, being pulled in every direction by scheming Aes Sedai who seem to want her or her power for themselves. And so they rushed her paperwork, broke through the red tape, so to speak, so that they could push or pull her to become a tool, or maybe even a weapon for their own ambitions.
The arrogance.
Everyone wants her for something, but Nynaeve doesn't really know what she wants. She certainly doesn't seem to want the power she's been given.
No one should have that much power.
The big question that everyone in the White Tower keeps asking Nynaeve, including herself, is, why are you here? Just after she is asked this question in a previous episode by one of Alana's warders, Maxim, the show immediately cuts to Nynaeve seeking out Egwene, and the first word out of Nynaeve's mouth is essentially the answer to that question for the audience.
Egwene?
Though Nynaeve might not want to admit it, she's there for Egwene, not herself. Elaine reaffirms this later in the episode, when Nynaeve is presumed dead.
It's pretty clear the Great Serpent Ring would never sit easily on her finger. But she still came. For you.
Just before the test, Liandrin tells Nynaeve,
Do this for you. Or not at all.
but the problem with this approach is that Nynaeve has rarely ever done things for herself. Yes, she had a bit of a fling with Lan in Season 1, and she took a few minutes to mourn the dead on Winter Night, but for the most part, she has only ever lived to try to take care of other people. Nynaeve can be obstinate and frustrating for book readers and show viewers alike, but in my opinion, when you realize that she's deeply insecure and pretty much only lives to protect the people around her, she becomes much more endearing. Almost all of her actions are reactionary, and her internal monologue in the books is riddled with self-doubt, while she acts confident and almost like a bully on the outside. Zoe Robbins does a phenomenal job showing Nynaeve's conflict, mostly through facial and body language. Nynaeve didn't leave the Two Rivers to seek adventure or glory or power. She just wanted to help her young friends who were taken away by Moiraine. From a very young age, Nynaeve had her family taken from her, which likely drives her to be the way that she is. We'll talk more about that soon, but Nynaeve has always felt a bit like an outcast, someone who has no family. And if you haven't figured it out yet, almost all of the fears that Nynaeve faces in her accepted test are about family and her fear of abandonment or abandoning others.
I don't have friends. I got family.
So when she finds people to care for, she's fiercely loyal to them, a mother bear who will do whatever she must to protect them. She doesn't care if the wheel weaves as it wills. Her will is to protect her family. Unfortunately, that hasn't gone too well for her so far, which is another point of insecurity that the Arches absolutely use against her. She feels as though she's failed her family. She let her parents die, not that she really could have done much as a child to save them. She left the people of the Two Rivers behind and fears they might be sick and dying without her. Matt is off who knows where, probably gambling and carousing, if he's even alive. Perrin is putting himself in danger while chasing dark friends and hunting for the legendary Horn of Valir. And Rand is presumed dead. You can be sure that Nynaeve blames herself for all of this. Egwene is the only one that she has remained close to. And now Egwene is distancing herself from Nynaeve as she finds more in common with her new bestie, Elaine. Just as Nynaeve begins to really question why she's sticking around in the White Tower, she's called unexpectedly in the night to face her fears in the Arches. In the books, Nynaeve spends no time as a novice, and basically is put through her accepted test right around the same time that she first arrives in Tar Valon. She's barely educated about how the accepted test works before she's thrust through the 3 arches that are kept deep in a basement of the White Tower. While some of the details of the ceremony are changed for the show, and the arches look a bit different from how they're described in the books, what matters is that Nynaeve has to pass through all 3 arches, where she will face her fears, first from her past, or what was, then the present, or what is, and finally the future, or what might be. If she refuses to enter, she'll be allowed to return at a later time to try again. But once she begins the test by entering an arch, assuming she doesn't get trapped or killed inside, which has been known to happen, she must see it through to the end, or she will be sent out of the White Tower for good. If she succeeds, she's washed clean through a sort of baptismal rite after each arch, where she is declared clean from her sins and those committed against her while in the arches. And after all 3, she is given the Aes Sedai Great Serpent Ring, without the colored gem, and is named Accepted of the White Tower. A bit about the Arches. We learned that the Arches are a type of terre angreal, or object made with the One Power for a specific use, and that they were created during the Age of Legends, thousands of years ago. While the creation and use of many terre angreal has been lost to history, we know that the Arches cause people to face their fears. Other terre angreal have been featured in the show, including the strange picture frames that Moiraine and Swan used in Season 1 to rendezvous incognito in an unknown location, the Oath Rod, which is used to bind Aes Sedai to their unbreakable oaths, and the odd collar and bracelet combo that we've seen from the strange invaders to the west, which I'll talk more about in another episode breakdown video. Did you notice that the 3 arches have different designs on them that subtly represent their purpose? The first arch, for what was, shows a clear, flowing, vine-like pattern that, to me, symbolizes the clarity of the past. It's already written, it's set in stone as it were, and you can examine your own memories as if you're looking at a mostly clear pattern or painting. The arch for what is has a more chaotic pattern, representing the idea that the present is always changing. There are hints of branching paths coming off of the center, implying that choices made in the present can change the trajectory of the future. The books talk about infinite alternate realities, or mirror worlds, that exist within the Great Pattern that are sometimes very different, or only sometimes slightly different from the current world, based on the choices and events that happen throughout history. It's never made fully clear in the books, but perhaps the visions that are presented in the accepted test arches are some of these mirror realities. After her first test, Nynaeve asks, "Is it real?" And she's told, "No one knows." The design on the arch for what might be is even less orderly, implying that while the past is set in stone and the present is constantly changing and weaving, the future is more unclear, and there are many branching possibilities. There's a brief glimpse of the design at the top of this arch, which looks almost like a spider web or wheel, with a clear center that has many branching spokes or paths. Those paths devolve into ever-dividing chaotic lines as they move down the arch. Because even though time is a wheel and many things repeat in this world, the farther away you get from the current present age, the less certain the future is, even to those like Min, who has the talent to read the future of the Great Pattern. Interestingly, whenever Nynaeve is inside any of the 3 arches, and the archway appears for her to return to the real world, the design of the arch always matches the look of the arch for what might be, the future. The books and show are filled with examples of doorways, gates, and arches of various types that are not only used to enter different worlds and realities or to travel long distances in a short amount of time, but also often represent choices.
The wheel weaves as the wheel wills.
By choosing to leave the visions that she is experiencing in the arches, Nynaeve is looking to the future, and metaphorically leaving her past and present concerns behind. Except of course there's a catch, which we'll get to. Also unique to the show are 3 jugs that are used during the cleansing ceremony after each archway vision. One is white, which represents women who channel the One Power, and the left side of the ancient Aes Sedai symbol, which is currently called the Flame of Tar Valon. I love that this is used first to represent the past, because there was a time when the One Power was pure for men and women, back before the male half of the One Power was corrupted by the Dark One. Even Nynaeve's vision of the past starts off as a much more simple and innocent time, just as the real-world past once was. The second jar is black and represents the male half of the One Power. The right side of the symbol is currently called the Dragon's Fang and is used as an omen for evil and prejudice. In the present, the male half of the One Power is corrupted and the world is less certain, just as the people of the Two Rivers in Nynaeve's second vision are corrupted and dying from a terrible sickness. The final jar shows the black and white halves reunited together to reform the ancient Aes Sedai symbol. Could this mean a reunification of the two could happen in the future? Is this a hint of what might be? Of course, we never get to see this jar being used in reality, because we find out later that Nynaeve didn't exit the Arches at this time, so this moment when she's washed clean and declared and accepted is still a part of her what might be test. What we did see were the three Aes Sedai waiting for Nynaeve to return, and then witnessing the Arches turn themselves off, with Nynaeve apparently still inside. I find it interesting that the black and white jar was then thrown and broken by Liandrin. Perhaps the future unification of male and female channelers won't happen, especially if Liandrin has a say.
This power, it's meant for women. And women alone. And when you touch it, you make it filthy.
In the books, the three arches are connected as a single piece, and require a trio of Aes Sedai to continuously channel into them to keep them running during the test. But in the show, three Aes Sedai appear to have to link together and then channel into the different arches only to activate them before they let go of the One Power. They make a big deal of showing just how difficult it is for these three women to activate the arches, and they are likely some of the most powerful Aes Sedai in the current age. Elaine reinforces this idea later when she tells Egwene,
And it takes more than one Aes Sedai to open the arches.
in the show, the arches appear to remain active either until the test is finished, or if the person stays inside and misses their exit window. After all,
The way back will come but once.
it's unclear if those women who remained inside died, or if they just chose to stay there to live out the lives that the arches made for them. When Egwene questions how Nynaeve could have failed, Elaine says,
Maybe what she faced offered her a better turn of the wheel.
this is the catch that I mentioned earlier, but we'll get to that. We also learn that the arches are dangerous, that some people who take near fatal wounds inside come out without a scratch, while others come out bearing the wounds or scars of their experiences inside. This is shown when Nynaeve exits the first arch, and Lyanna Sedai heals her of her wound. But whether they take physical injuries inside or not, the arches definitely leave mental scars. Later, when Nynaeve exits the third arch in her Fakeout vision of the future, Lyanna goes to heal her, only to announce that the blood isn't hers. But the look on Nynaeve's face is clear. The trauma she endured inside cut deeper than any physical wounds. And finally, we're told that channeling the One Power inside of the arches should not be possible. Okay, so now that we know way more than we ever need to about the arches, let's talk about Nynaeve's visions. But real quick, you know I don't currently have sponsors on my channel, but I want to bring your attention to an amazing fan-made project that I think you'll love. Soundscapes of Time, created by the insanely talented Jordan Rennells, is an awesome way to experience an immersive, fresh new take on the Wheel of Time. His Kickstarter is currently open, and he needs your support. He calls it a unique audio journey through the Wheel of Time and says that it's like a movie in your ears. Essentially, what Jordan does is he creates extremely immersive 3D spatial ambient soundtracks that are meant to accompany the audiobooks. Yes, these soundscapes will be as long as the audiobooks themselves and are custom made to sync with the story, as read by Michael Kramer and Kate Redding. Michael and Kate heard samples from the project and were very excited about it. There will also eventually be a version that will sync up with Rosamund Pike's reading of the audiobooks. He's nearly done with The Eye of the World and is currently running a Kickstarter with tiers that will give us access to the first 4 books, or even all 15 Wheel of Time books. That's 450 hours of custom cinematic soundtracks. But what's even more incredible is that these soundscapes are so well produced that you can also just listen to them as standalone soundtracks that will make you feel like you're in the Wheel of Time world, even if you don't listen along with the audiobooks. Jordan has already successfully completed soundscapes for the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the first Harry Potter book, and more. Please check out Soundscapes of Time on Kickstarter, where you can learn way more and even hear samples from The Eye of the World. And please consider backing this awesome fan-made project so that we can get even more bonuses through his stretch goals. There's a link in the description of this video and pinned to the top of the comments. Okay, back to unraveling the episode. I actually think there are two different levels of fear that are being manifest in Nynaeve's visions. There are her deeper fears of abandonment or not being able to help those she considers family, as I've already discussed. And then there are also her more clear and present fears, or surface level anxieties, that might not go as deep. Specifically, her concern about becoming an Aes Sedai, especially becoming a member of the Red Ajah. Nynaeve believes that the Aes Sedai only think about themselves, and that they rejected her mentor, as she told Moiraine in Season 1. And she's worried that Liandrin is pushing her to be someone that she doesn't want to be. I believe this is why the Crimson Thorn root and the color red are so heavily featured in each of her 3 visions. There's even a point when her Fakeout archway experience shows her wearing a red dress and a red Great Serpent ring. The arches have a strange way of knowing not just a person's deepest fears, but also capitalizing on their present anxieties as well. This happens later in the series with another character, but I won't spoil that for now. We know that the Crimson Thorn root can help with pain when diluted, but it can be deadly in concentrated amounts. I think the same can be said about the Red Ajah. Her father tells her in her first vision,
"Remember, Red is dead."
Nynaeve's test for what was forced her to relive real memories of her past when her parents were killed by bandits. This is very different from her book vision, where she was chased through a maze by one of the Forsaken. Actually, Nynaeve's entire past has been changed for the show, but I think that it's a great way to explain why Nynaeve is the way that she is. Her father was the one who seemed to teach her about herbs, and her mother appeared to be more of a protector and fighter. I love this shot of her father lovingly scrubbing the Crimson Thorn off of her hands. We don't know why people came for Nynaeve's parents, or why her father spoke the Old Tongue, but you might recall the Old Tongue phrase her father said to her before he died was translated by Lan for Nynaeve back in Season 1. This is one of the reasons why Nynaeve began to have feelings for Lan. The phrase literally speaks to Nynaeve's desire to have a family and to never be alone. She associates her braid, which is very similar to her mother's braid, with her connection to home, and she tells this to Egwene back in the very first episode of the show, when she gives Egwene her initiation ceremony into the women's circle. To add to Nynaeve's fears, the Arches required her to abandon her parents just as they were dying. Harsh. When she entered the vision for what is, she awoke inside of the Winespring Inn back at the Two Rivers. While not exactly the same, this vision is the most accurate to her book accepted test. We don't know if the present day vision she is experiencing is based on what's really happening in the Two Rivers, or if it's all a nightmare created by the Arches to push Nynaeve's buttons. Remember, the last time we saw the Winespring Inn, it had been destroyed by Moiraine during the Trolloc attack on Winternight, along with much of the village. Could the inn and the village be rebuilt in the present time? Are the people there really dying without Nynaeve to care for them? Nynaeve finds Rand's father, Tam, who explains that the whole village got sick after Nynaeve left. Then we learn that Natty Cawthon, Mat's mother, and easily one of the least likable villagers at this point, has taken Nynaeve's place as a sort of interim wisdom, and she's basically killing the people by overdosing them on Crimson Thorn root. Nynaeve tells Natty that the Aes Sedai can help to heal the people, but Natty says they appealed to the Aes Sedai and nobody came to help. And then she cuts to the heart of Nynaeve's fears with these stinging words.
Your job was to protect us, and you left us. This isn't your home anymore.
Ouch. Right in Nynaeve's insecurity. Once again, the use of the Crimson Thorn represents Nynaeve's fears of what she thinks it means to currently be Aes Sedai. She was told that the term Aes Sedai translates to servant of all, and yet none of them came to help when the Two Rivers called. And so, as Nynaeve is prone to do, she tries to take matters into her own hands. She was also told by the Aes Sedai that she can't channel the One Power in the Arches, but she tries to heal Tam anyway, only to realize that once again she has failed. And then she's reminded by Tam that she failed to protect Rand as well. Where Natty Cawthon intentionally attacked Nynaeve at her core, Tam does it accidentally when he asks about Rand and says, "Thank you for keeping him safe." And then he asks her to stay with him until he dies. But that's when the Arches decide to make Nynaeve choose to leave. The Arches really don't pull any punches. The Crimson Thorn root doesn't appear in Nynaeve's third vision, except maybe as embroidery on her dress. But in the Fakeout vision, which is a red herring, pun intended, Nynaeve's fears of becoming a member of the Red Ajah and losing Lan flash before her eyes before she's ejected from a false archway with no memory of what she did inside. She looks down and is shocked to see Lan's leather Hadori in her bloodied hand. To me, this is the moment when Nynaeve finally realizes what matters most to her, and it isn't about becoming an Aes Sedai, or at least not one like these sisters. She says it better than I can.
I'm not like you. If this test is about turning my back on the people I love, the people who trust me to take care of them, if being an Aes Sedai means trusting the Tower over everything and everyone else, I won't. Never.
Nynaeve,
Keep your ring. I'm not your sister.
Even though Nynaeve is still inside of the third arch, what she has learned and what she says are real and true. As she packs to leave the tower, Nynaeve tells Egwene that she finally understands.
I came here for you, Egwene. To protect you. But the truth is you don't need my protection. I can see that now. I guess I learned something here after all.
And then Nynaeve tells Egwene that the term Aes Sedai means servant of all, and that Egwene will actually be a woman who's worthy of that title. Nynaeve is finally learning to let go and to do things for herself for a change. How convenient that Lan just happened to show up as she was leaving the city. I loved how the archway that appeared in her third vision was facing back towards the White Tower. She had a choice. Either she could leave the White Tower behind and live for herself and start a real family with Lan, or she could choose the White Tower and the potentially lonely life of an Aes Sedai. The archway was very dim, and she barely heard the words about the way back because she had already pretty much made up her mind. Once she makes her choice to stay with Lan, accepting this new reality as her own, the archway disappears completely. The arches went still, and the Aes Sedai assumed Nynaeve was dead.
Nynaeve Almira has made her choice.
Back in the real world, Sheriam Sedai tells Egwene about Nynaeve's supposed death in an extremely matter-of-fact, almost heartless way. It's an interesting contrast to see all of the emotion from Nynaeve and Egwene in this episode, while the Aes Sedai try to act callous and uncaring. It's almost as if the Aes Sedai have forgotten that they're servants of all and have sacrificed their humanity to wear the ring and shawl.
Some are just not up to the task of wearing this ring.
This is exactly what Nynaeve wants to resist. If becoming Aes Sedai means leaving your humanity behind, then what's the point? I thought Madeline Madden's acting in her moments of grief and anger were so well done. Even Liandrin was affected by this loss and let Mat go, though she clearly had ulterior motives, which we'll discuss in the next video. Perhaps Liandrin felt guilt for what happened to Nynaeve, or perhaps she regretted losing Nynaeve's power because she pushed Nynaeve too quickly. This is not the first time that a novice died in Liandrin's care, which is even more sad when you remember that one of Liandrin's biggest drives is supposedly to protect little girls who can't protect themselves. It makes me wonder just what it was that happened to Liandrin in her past that makes her hate men so much. I loved when Egwene stepped up and confronted Liandrin up at the top of the tower, just after Liandrin melted down Nynaeve's great serpent ring. It's fun to see the spark of strength and determination in Egwene. Did you notice that she seems particularly strong with fire? I also love this little detail, where as Egwene walked away, the fire seemed to almost follow her for a moment, symbolizing to me that Egwene has the potential to become the true flame of Tar Valon, an Aes Sedai to make Nynaeve proud. Of course, we know that Nynaeve wasn't really dead, but just trapped inside of the arches, but Egwene didn't know that. Egwene went down to the basement and attempted to reopen the arches on her own. Did you notice that Egwene has been channeling without her hands since her run-in with the White Cloaks? Except in this scene, Egwene was willing to drop her pride to try everything, including channeling with her hands to help Nynaeve. When I saw this scene in some early teasers, I was worried that Egwene would be the one to help Nynaeve escape from the arches, so I was very pleased to learn that her attempts failed. I love how even after Egwene yelled at Elaine still remained a true friend and helped Egwene to cope by providing her with a shoulder and blanket to cry on. She offered to stay the night near the arches with Egwene to keep her company. The remaining part of this third vision for What Might Be has some similarities, but is mostly different from its book counterpart. In the book, there is no Fakeout vision. As soon as she enters the third arch, Nynaeve finds herself in the apparently restored kingdom of Malkier, married to the king, Lan. We learn during this vision that they have multiple children, and one of her daughters is named Elnor, after Nynaeve's mother. The more Nynaeve starts to accept the vision as reality, the less she remembers the real world. We see a hint of this in the show as well, where Nynaeve seems to not even hear the voice or see the archway as she accepts her new life with Lan. In the book, Nynaeve even begins to form memories of a false past where she remembers marrying Lan and becoming a queen. The archway does disappear for a brief moment when she starts to accept the vision as her new reality, just as it does in the show. But in the book, Nynaeve immediately remembers Rand, Egwene, Mat, and Perrin, and her need to help those she loves snaps her back to reality. She becomes so determined to bring the doorway back and leave this fantasy behind that she channels the One Power, which shouldn't be possible, and she essentially wills the archway to reappear. She then leaves Lan and her children behind. In the show, Nynaeve basically runs off with Lan to the Two Rivers, where she marries him and starts a family. They have a daughter, also named Elnor after her mother, but she fully lives multiple years of this life and appears to be quite happy. Perrin and Mat are back in the Two Rivers, and in a way she sees them as children who are happy and mostly carefree too. It's just nice seeing Mat wearing something other than a bathrobe for a change. Elnor's excitement of seeing him this way matched my own. Hopefully these flashes of Mat and Perrin are foreshadowing of what might be for their characters in future episodes. In this reality, Egwene has become an Aes Sedai of the Green Aja, who still sends messages to Nynaeve from far away, where there are rumors of wars with invading Trollocs. In this reality, Rand, the Dragon Reborn and supposed savior of the world, is dead. Even in this alternate reality, the wheel turns, and eventually the armies of the Dark Ones spread across the world and destroy everything in their path, including the Two Rivers. In a mirror to her experience as a child, Nynaeve hides Elnor in the cellar and attempts to fight off the invaders, but she fails her family again. Lan gets killed by a sword, Mat dies from what looks like a slash across his eye, and Perrin appears to be killed by an axe, just as his wife was years before on Winternight. Once again, Nynaeve almost miraculously channels a burst of the One Power, this time to destroy the Trollocs, and then the Archway reappears. The show makes it seem like Nynaeve didn't mean to bring the Archway back, but I like to think that deep down, Nynaeve knew this wasn't real, and when she channeled the One Power, she almost unconsciously did it with the intent to bring back the Archway and go back to the real world.
We have to go back!
Whether she did it intentionally or not, she remembered the way back. Nynaeve was once again faced with a choice. A terrible choice. It's unclear if she simply exited the Archway with the intent to save her daughter, or if there was more to it. I like to think that she realized the only way for her to even have a potential happy future was to look towards the White Tower and to learn what it takes to become an Aes Sedai so that she can use her power to protect not just the ones that she loves in the present and future, but possibly the whole world from the incoming invasion of evil. She may have been at the White Tower for Egwene before, but now she has a real reason to be there for herself. I'm sure she also hoped that she could save Elnor. After all, she brought blood and other things through the arches from her other visions. Why not her daughter? In my mind, the answer to the question about the White Tower, why are you here, suddenly became clear as the Archway appeared before her. The arch was facing away from the village of the Two Rivers, symbolizing that Nynaeve had to turn her back on her past and her dreams of having a family and look forward to a different future, where she will potentially become the most powerful Aes Sedai the world has seen in 1,000 years. A true servant of all. But is it worth it? Is this the kind of sacrifice that's necessary to become an Aes Sedai? The devastating look on Nynaeve's face after she exited the Archway with only a bloodstain to remind her of her lost child was heartbreaking. I can't help but draw parallels to the deep sorrow that accompanies women who have lost children before, during, or after childbirth. Now, the callous nature of the Aes Sedai seems to make a bit more sense. The scars from the accepted test arches go way past skin deep and will never fully heal. All of these women have endured extreme trauma and deep sacrifice to be here, but many have become corrupted by the power they wield and seem to have cut themselves off from their humanity. Will Nynaeve remain stalwart, or will she also become corrupted by her power? In the book, Nynaeve exits the third arch and discovers a large black thorn embedded deep into each of her palms, as a representation of stigmata, or the scars that symbolize the sacrifice of Jesus in Christianity. The scars were never fully healed, just like her trauma from the arches. These scars act as a reminder to her of the price of power. The arches, like the wheel itself, are harsh and uncaring. The wheel certainly doesn't care what we want. The wheel weaves as it wills, but at what cost? This is the price of the ring. Thanks to my supporters, and thank you for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. My life has been insanely busy working multiple jobs and raising teenagers, so thank you for your patience as I've been away. I can't make any promises, but I hope to start creating more content on a regular basis, and I have some very fun videos in the works, including the second part to this video, my long overdue Prague visit video, as well as other Unraveling episode videos, and a massive Season 2 finale breakdown. Please consider supporting me on Patreon or here on YouTube so I can do more of this more often. Until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.